we'll move to the back seven. Drew White, 9.5 tackles for loss, 60 stops in a shortened season. So why is he a standout player? What are some of his characteristics? How do you feel about the linebackers across the board?
You know, what's interesting about Drew White is he didn't actually play that well last year, and yet still had, as you mentioned, 9.5 tackles for loss and 60 snaps in a situation where he was rotating a decent amount. And he's he's an underrated athlete. I think what happened to him last year, Mark, is the will linebacker. They called it a buck last year. It's called a will linebacker now in this defense. Was not good. Notre Dame starting will linebacker last year, and I still have a hard time believing this. Shane Simon had 14 tackles in 11 games. I don't see how a starting linebacker, Notre Dame's top special teams guy who played one game at linebacker against South Florida, had 13 tackles last year. I don't see how a starting linebacker can go through a whole season and have 14 tackles. That just kind of speaks to the lack of production they got. And then the guy he rotated with only had like 20-something tackles. So like they didn't produce much. And there was a lot of issues there. And I think Drew White had to spend so much time worried about that position that it took away from his game. Well, I think that position is going to be a little bit more shored up. Those guys are all back. I think Marcus Freeman's going to put them in a position to be more aggressive and attack more. And I think that's going to benefit Drew White to just, hey, do your job, man. Don't worry about everybody else. You do your job, right? We'll get those guys lined up. Go play and be active. And I think Drew's going to fit in well there, assuming he's healthy. But the guy to look out for me is a kid named Jack Kaiser, who's going to be stepping into the shoes that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah left. Jack actually started one game last year against South Florida when Shane Simon was out with COVID protocols, and he had like 9 tackles. So he had almost as many tackles in one game, one start, as Shane Simon had in the other 11 starts. He's a very athletic kid, was the only 1A Mr. Football in Indiana in history. And he was a quarterback and a free safety in high school. So it kind of speaks to his athleticism. But you know, he's a guy, he's not going to be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, right? So he's not going to get a lot of the love that Jeremiah got, because Jeremiah was a freak. I mean, he just made plays. You're just like, come on, how's a guy supposed to make that play? I can't coach that, right? Like, that's just a dude being a dude. I think Jack's going to be a little bit more disciplined as a player than Jeremiah was. I think he's going to be very effective. He's going to be productive, and they're going to need him to be, because if you looked at the rover in Marcus Freeman's defense last year, Jarrell White, if you project him out over a 13-game season, because they only played 10 games last year, he would have had about 100 tackles, about 10 tackles for loss, about 4.5 sacks, 2 picks, and about 5 pass breakups. That's a lot of production. Jack Kaiser is going to get an opportunity to do a lot of that, and I think he's a guy that is going to have to play well, because again, look whose shoes he's trying to fill. But I think Jack's going to fill them quite nicely.
Yeah, Kaiser had 20 tackles, 3 for loss, and had a pick. And I was actually just curious to see who that was against.
Boston College.
There it is, against BC.